Welcome to the Glide Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ez Chandra, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about scaling with content with our guest, Jai Howitt.
Great to be
Jai,
here.
welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome to have you here, mate. Thanks for coming on board and doing this podcast. So what I usually do is a bit of an intro on the guest, and I've got a bit of a blurb here that you've supplied, so I'll just read it out. So Jai launched brand Boostr 2.5 years ago after starting and failing many businesses along the way, as you usually do, dating back to about the age of 16. So you started pretty young, mate, in the entrepreneurial journey. From sharing a bedroom office with his brother to growing Instagram accounts to over 500,000 followers, to living in his van as a content creator, Jai is now operating a 7-figure creative agency called Brand Boostr and partnered to soon be a 7-figure e-commerce business called Naming This Later, which I'm sure we'll hear more about.
Yeah.
Jai devotes most of his recent years to living curiously, becoming a better version of himself every day and working on things that excite him, namely content and e-commerce are definitely those two of those things. So awesome to have you here, Jai.
Yeah,
thanks for coming. So we're going to get cracking with the episode with a question which is really around Jai's journey. So obviously you started off as like an influencer. So maybe if you can start off there and maybe tell us your journey and how that evolved into Brand Boostr.
Totally. So a bit of a journey on the biz side, but if I sort of jump forwards to when I got into the content stuff, that would have been sort of 2017, and my family lived on the Cocos Islands, so it was a pretty prime opportunity to pick up a camera and take some photos and videos. So, mucked around with the old YouTube thing back in the day, and at the time I was growing Instagram accounts for other people, and I guess applying some of the techniques for myself. I don't know if I consider myself an influencer per se, but more of just a creator and a
content
traveler.
creator.
And just wanted to document my journey along the way.
And obviously with the Cocos Islands as your environment and surroundings, that was just really easy to kind of create awesome content.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to take a bad photo there, and that worked in my favor. And so I sort of spent nearly a year there, but I'd also spent 4 or 5 years as a kid there. And then I spread the wings a little bit and went on a journey into, like you mentioned, I lived in a van for a bit. I lived in Bali for 6 months and worked with a digital marketer over there. And that sort of led me, I guess, down the path of going from content and freelancing on the content side, particularly videography was kind of my gig, and then moved more into just marketing and e-commerce and agency life at the time. Actually I tried to start a Facebook ad agency and spent many hundreds of hours sitting at my desk from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. in my brother's bedroom, like I said, and saw very little return from that. I've told this story before, but I had 30-40 calls lined up over a few months, and I didn't close one of them. And but I guess the thing that drove me was knowing that I was onto something, and I knew there was potential there in the social media space, in the advertising space, and something would stick eventually. And I started to get a little bit of traction. I was running ads for a couple of brands, but I guess I got to a point where I sat back and really asked myself, first of all, what am I really good at? And then secondly, what I really want to be doing. And it kind of...
Where your strengths are.
From the travels I'd had, I asked myself, out of all the content I've done, which did I enjoy the most? And it was always those more lifestyle brands, e-commerce brands, where I could go and travel and build a story and experience around it. And so... sort of combined the two principles where I now understood the advertising side of things and what it takes to create a converting piece of content as opposed to just a nice cinematic piece of content. And obviously the content side. So combine those. Brand Boostr was born 2019, sort of late 2019, and it's just grown pretty rapidly since then. Obviously e-commerce has had a bit of an uptrend in the last couple of years, so now we're a team of 12 or 13 out in North Fremantle.
Awesome.
We've got a little studio, and
it's been amazing seeing your growth, mate, and congrats on everything you've achieved to date. But it's going to be exciting to see just in 5 years where you'll be.
I mean, it would be exciting to see what the whole landscape even looks like in 5 years, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that, I mean, I guess like when a lot of people start off in the creative industry, they kind of like go into, branding and strategy, and they kind of work for like different clients, like maybe local clients, maybe more brand focused.
Yeah.
But I guess your trajectory has kind of gone down that e-commerce path and working with products, possibly not like world famous ones,
Yeah.
but ones that like are still really hot online.
Yeah.
Where do you think like that your point of difference is that sort of attracts you to those sort of companies? Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's funny you mention that, because back then, I probably had a perception that I didn't know how branding agencies and strategists were able to charge for work. Because for me, it was like the thing in my mind that you needed was content, and then a way to apply that content and grow. So you almost needed the actual tangible application of it rather than the strategy behind it. I didn't understand.
So it's like the content first.
Yeah,
type strategy.
that was sort of I guess how I looked at it, and so we've always been down that route, and now we are obviously an agency in the marketing space and growth focused, but we are just purely content. So that does really sort of help us stand out in the market, because we just do creative for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands who are wanting to scale and grow, usually through social media. So Facebook and Instagram ads being one. TikTok is another big platform, which I'm sure we'll talk about today as well.
Yeah.
So our entire model is really around the creative, but we are also data driven. So we're in ad accounts, and we're actually looking at what the metrics are telling us and making decisions based on that, not just subjective decisions on what the content looks like. Oh, this looks nice, this doesn't, because that doesn't, to us anyway, it doesn't show the value of the work. The value is really in the result it can produce.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And we'll go more into like the results driven formula that you've got in the model, which I really like, which a lot of content agencies I feel need to work towards. So I think you're definitely kicking goals on that space. Could you tell us a little bit about like your philosophy around, I guess, business and like working to your strengths? Because obviously you are of a younger age, and you've kind of like worked on these things quite early versus like giving yourself time and then discovering things along the way by making mistakes and so forth. I guess you're a bit more intuitive and a bit more in tune with your like core values, right? So could you just explain a little bit about that that growth mindset that you have?
Yeah, something that really has driven me for a long time. And I probably need to nod in the direction of my parents from sort of 14, 15 years old. My parents are both teachers, and but always had wanting to pursue other things as well and build something differently. So they dabbled in all sorts of stuff, websites, network marketing, all sorts of different ventures on the side, and really encouraged us as kids to get out there and try some of those things. And at the time, we kids were like, oh, I don't want to do any of that. I don't have a reason to, make any money necessarily. And so, but it's only been in recent years that I've realized how much of an impact that had.
So they were quite encouraging.
Yeah,
like, like in terms of whatever interests you had, they were like fully supportive. Yeah.
I guess there was an element of like they look at their careers and potentially wanted something different for us. So, university wasn't necessarily the be all and end all.
So they weren't necessarily pushing on education and
not
like getting to uni, that sort of a thing?
Yeah, so they were always, for us it was more about the discipline, and if we were going to do ATAR in school, it was to be the best at what we can be and prove that we can stick something out, not so much to then be able to get accepted and go to uni. So yeah, we're
basically
encouraged.
Give it your best.
Yeah.
So you have options,
Yeah,
right?
exactly
Like
that,
as long as you've got the options there, you can choose whether you want to be a vet or whether you want to go and do photography or whatever. But as long as you give yourself that spectrum of choice. So I really like that.
And that was it for them. And I grew up, not a lot of people know this, but 6 siblings, so quite a big family, and for most of our life on one income, my dad's side. So we didn't necessarily have a lot of resources growing up, but we always had those experiences, and that support, I guess, was really powerful. So to long-winded answer to sort of come back to the value side of things, I think that really set us up, or myself up, to really value learning and growth, and almost just showing up every day and being better than you were yesterday. And that's flowed into many things. I had a funny story when I must have been 12 or 13, and we lived on a farm down south, like a little valley, and my grandparents came and stayed with us for a bit. And I remember we drive down this road into the town. It's about 10, 15 minutes, and we drive it every day to school. And we're so used to it, we just didn't pay attention, to where we're driving. And I was in the back seat, and my granddad turns to me and he goes, as we're driving, he says, "How many cows were in that paddock that we just passed?" I'm like, I have no idea how many cows are in that paddock. And so I said, I don't know. And he goes, "You need to be more observant." And he just, nothing after that. And I was just sitting there being like, oh, that was a bit random, but all right, thanks, Granddad. And and it's funny because I look back on that moment now, and I think it was actually a really pivotal moment, because since that point I've had a much different sense of being observant and being curious and recognizing what's around you.
You had a different outlook in life.
Yeah, and that's honestly held through to, we might speak about it, but the first client that we brought on board when Brand Boostr came about, that was purely a case of me being so observant and determined to find the right contact and get in touch and that sort of thing. So that's a huge part of my values and the growth side.
No, that's cool. I think you're also a bit of a special case, Jai, I must say.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
I've got a son. I've told him to be observant many times, and he's just, it's not sticking.
Maybe you got to do it in a different way. You got to count the cows.
Maybe he's not old enough yet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll go on to the next point, which is like what you do best, which is like 100% creative, but for e-commerce.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how important that is in terms of a key to growing your brand, like online? And just talk about how content drives results and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me is that content is everywhere you look. The face of a brand, their social media, their website, their everything is effectively content. So it really does play a huge part in your advertising, in your interactions, in how your brand is perceived.
And do you think sometimes it's a bit of an afterthought? It's like, we've got our website, we've got our ads.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with our content? Yeah.
Totally. And reality is you can scrape through, you can put a website together, you can get a couple of product photos and start running ads technically, but you're also kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you're not giving the best chance possible. You're not testing. You could be getting a 2 times return on ad spend when, if you tested enough, you could be getting a 4 times, and it's not always that linear. You don't just suddenly double results getting better content, but I've got a few examples we can touch on as well. But for the most part, for us, it's really about let the data do the talking. So, we could have the best idea in the world, but until you actually test it, put it in front of people, the market, and see how they respond to it, it doesn't have any merit until you can do that. So let the data do the talking.
And the other thing is that, like, if you're creating content for scaling, or you're scaling businesses with the content that you're using, you're going to be a bit more data driven, like you said. But how do you sort of keep that balance between the cost of production and like scaling? Because I guess that's what a lot of other agencies also struggle with, is like there's a lot of work that goes into producing content. But then you don't want it to be so expensive that, as you're testing and A/B testing, you need to get the return on investment. So how do you keep that balance?
Great question. This is something we get a lot as well. And I think in some cases there's a misconception that I guess like some other creative agencies or companies, production companies, might do like one hero video. But the reality is, if you run that video and it doesn't get the result, you're kind of back to square one. You've invested money and you don't have the result. So since the start, we'll never do a 1 or 2 videos. We'd always do 3, 4, 5, 6 as a starting point. And they might all be shot during the same day, but different concepts or angles or
so it's like micro concepts and micro videos. And then depending on what those videos, how they perform,
you lean in
more, throw more resources and investment. Got it.
And then there's also an element as well where you're able to test it and then analyze the data and make changes on that content as well. So you're looking at things like if we're talking video, the thumb stop ratio, the average watch time, the click-through rate that the videos are getting, and there's always ways you can improve each of those things and change videos.
And like, do you find that the videos that you're producing, they're often like vary in lengths and in terms of like how much production value is in it? Like, for instance, like if you look at a typical television commercial or even a brand that creates a really nice video, there's a lot of energy that goes into that. Whereas, do you find that like what you're doing now, it's you're not having to with the mobile, I guess you're not having to like have amazing production. You can get away with a bit more streamlined.
Yeah. Oh, totally. You know, we've seen a huge rise in UGC or more natural
that's right.
sort of video reviews, and there's a place for both, no doubt. You know, I know a lot of brands who build a lot more high production on the front end to sort of put their brand in front of people, and then start to build out retargeting flows, and UGC can also be used to cold traffic too. But for the most part, we try to incorporate both into a strategy. You know, think realistically about the market and what's going to get the best result for the brand. So if that's a 10-second video, great. You know, we're outcome focused. But it is a hard one because, you know, some brands in the back of their mind, they're probably analyzing, okay, we're paying X amount, that's X amount per video. We've just paid $1,000 for this 10-second clip, you know. But in actual fact, it's actually, if they are data first and performance focused, it's a better outcome because that 10-second video is going to get them a better result. That's not always the case, but typically that's how we look at it. So it is a funny one because there is a value associated. You do have fixed costs with models and locations and production.
The other element to look at it is like, you know, do you spend $7,000 on one video, or do you spend $7,000 and create 7 videos? But the 7 videos will allow you, if you look at the data, to work out what's going to work quicker. Like it'll get you to your success quicker. Whereas that one video won't. It's very hit and miss. Do you know what I mean? So,
totally. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I guess, diversifying risk a little bit. Just giving yourself a better chance.
No, that's cool. And like often, you know, because we're a paid media agency, so we work with brands that have content. Sometimes they lack content, right? So sometimes there's a bit of work in convincing the customer that they need to produce content at scale. And then sometimes they just want to keep repurposing the same material. So how do you create that conversation where they have a bit of confidence in doing that?
We have a bit of an easier job than you probably do because they're usually coming to us when they've realized they do need the content. Whereas, you know, naturally if they don't understand how paid media works, they just can't understand that as you spend more, results usually dip, so you need more content to fuel it. You know, they might think you're just you're telling them what they want to hear, but it is a real thing. So we are fortunate in that sense. But if someone was kind of on the fence and didn't understand the scope, I guess the best thing you can do is just show other cases where it has really made the biggest difference. And I guess I do have an advantage as well, being involved with naming this later. On the e-commerce side, you know, I am a founder in a brand, and I am able to ultimately understand the same problems that brand owners have. When we're doing content for Name This Later, I'm thinking, what do I actually want with this? I don't want one video. I barely even want 6 videos. I want 10 videos with 3 variations of each, you know, and so using that to inform also how we work on the agency side, because you know, I can sort of answer some of the brand founder questions as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I actually am very fascinated with actual brand and e-com owners as well. Like I love talking with them, understanding what their like concerns are and challenges, because that kind of gets you really knee deep into what the issues are, so that you can make your service better, which is ultimately what you're doing. So going into like brands that are like growth focused versus like image focused, do you kind of like battle with that a little bit, where they have expectations that are set, where, you know, maybe they have an in-house team that manages the brand, and then they're kind of giving it to you, you know what I mean? And then you have to sort of take over. There must be a little bit of a battle there sometimes.
It's funny. It's the brands that, to be honest, the projects that maybe don't go exactly how they should, it's almost always because the brand is too involved. And it's hard.
Or the founders too involved.
The founder, that's the team behind it is too involved.
And it's actually the same for us as well.
It's the same
for us.
And I think the reason for it is because then it becomes more opinion based. It becomes they have this vision in their head for what they want, and we create based on our vision. And if those aren't truly aligned, there's a clash. Whereas if they're coming to us trusting in our expertise, they don't necessarily know what the outcome's going to look like, but trust in the outcome being there, then there's less of that wanting to change things, disappointed with the look of the content, that sort of thing. And it's funny, it's usually the slightly bigger brands that maybe have a little team or a little bit more focused on the brand face and name and colors and fonts and things. Tend to be a little bit, but just need more communication. We're still up for the challenge, and there's also times where we need to stick to our guns and say, hey, but we tried this before, and based on our experience, we'd really recommend kind of shifting this way.
I think our challenges are very similar because even though you're doing content, when you're creating ads, there's also content in there as well. There's static graphics or canvas ads and animation ads. There's also copywriting. And a lot of the times, you do get some certain founders that are really involved in the copywriting.
I've seen that.
And it could be just the smallest thing, and but they always want to sort of get quite involved in it. But so like you said, there's a bit of a balance and trust, and sort of saying, hey, look, these guys, they're kind of taking an outside perspective. Let's just see what they can do, and then take a bit of a step back.
And a lot of that you can typically determined from the first call, right? Even ask them, say, hey, what is your goal coming out of this call? What do you actually want to be achieving? If it's, hey, we want our time back, we want to be hands off, that's kind of music to the ears. But on the flip side, if they're hey, we just want to be looked after, we want fresh ideas, that seems to be a big thing. Brands, we have a couple of brands who have proper in-house teams, they produce content regularly, but they get stuck in their own ways. They get stuck in what they're doing, so they sort of come to us to pump more content in. They'll even repurpose it themselves, but they just need fresh stuff.
Hence the name Brand Booster.
There you go.
That's good. Okay, so could you give us a bit of a typical rundown? If I was a business and I'm looking to produce content at scale and grow, I think you have a bit of a plan that you set out, a monthly plan or whatever. Could you kind of explain how that looks and what you actually produce?
Totally. So we kind of sit on either the ag creative only side or playing more into organic socials as well. So, that comes into
repurposing material?
So repurposing would usually also happen on the ag creative side. There's kind of crossover between the two, but on the organic, a big focus is TikTok for us. So TikTok organic, just because of the nature of TikTok and how much organic reach there is, and we can touch on that. But to your point, there's often TikTok style videos that you can also run in Facebook ads that also perform really well just because of the nature of the organic kind of authentic piece of content. So there is a bit of crossover, but typically when looking at a brand, we'd probably start with their product, because on TikTok, there's average order values more around the $50 mark. There's a few key things that can really be advantageous on that platform. But ad creatives is also a big part of it too. Depends how they want to scale. Some people want to diversify from running Facebook ads and relying on Facebook ads. So that's
they go to other channels.
But for the most part, we would kick off on the ad creative side, and we'd be producing something like 4 or 5 videos with a couple of variations of each in that first kind of 30 days.
Okay.
And then we want them to test it.
How many variations of each video?
2 or 3 usually. Depends.
So there could be up to 10 to 15 videos.
And variations don't have to be hugely different. It could be switching out hooks or angles. It could be
changing the copy,
rearranging copy and clips, just for split testing purposes. Because we're finding, for the most part, the first few seconds almost makes or breaks the video. And I can give some examples. So we'll start there, and then we'll actually, once it's been tested, we can see the data in the ad account. We'll actually reiterate on that content as well, particularly the videos, so that we can, again, look at all the metrics, improve certain parts, and get an even better outcome. So that's the ad creative side. And then on TikTok, it's just a totally different game. It's more about throwing shit at the fan and see what sticks. But there's definitely a lot of strategy that goes into it. Personally, I've spent quite a bit of time on the platform, and we kicked off the Brand Booster account about 3 weeks ago. We've just introduced TikTok as a service this year, after a few people asking about it. And the Brand Booster account, our second video that we posted is just about to tick over 6 million views.
Yeah,
and,
wow.
You know,
On the Brand Booster
on the
account.
Brand Booster
Wow.
account, you can see, you know, that
Is that a Coco Island?
No,
show?
it's not. No, it's in the studio. But we do have one of those little office booths in the studio, and people seem to love that. So
Yeah, it's very on trend, isn't it?
yeah, and you know, like that video, for example, to get 6 million eyes on your content for free, there's not many platforms in the world that you can do that now. You know, Instagram back in the day.
Oh man, it's crazy.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe you could get that sort of thing.
And I'm noticing like you'll put even just an average video is like 10,000 views, and then you'll just jump straight up to like 500,000 in your next video, just depending on what the video is.
Right,
Yeah.
it's so dependent on the content. Content is king on TikTok, and it has to be so native to the platform. It can't be a video you made for a Facebook ad, just throwing that on TikTok won't work. So
whereas like with Facebook, I noticed that it was very engagement focused, so people would just naturally stop depending on how many likes and shares and comments that particular post had. Whereas with TikTok, it's not about that. It's about like the content itself.
Like, are you consumed by it? Are you rewatching?
Because that's the first thing you see as
Yeah.
soon as you swipe up or whatever.
Yeah.
The first thing you see is the piece of content. You're not drawn to like how many views naturally it's got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as it's coming through.
I mean,
the feed,
views. No, some people might look at the likes to see if it's got.
If
like
they're on
2
someone's
likes.
feed, if they're sort of looking at the tile view, you can see all the
views and stuff.
views
Yeah,
and
true.
stuff. But if you're like just in that sort of where you just
Scrolling the For You page. Yeah.
So
it's just so content dependent, and you know, you can have one video, like you say, with 10,000 views or 1,000 views, and one video with 1 million. And that's what we love about the platform. You know, it's not an overnight success thing. I'm not suggesting that you can go and get 6 million views in your second video, but we probably did luck out to some respect. But you know, it is a science at the end of the day, and if you consume enough content with intent on the platform on TikTok,
it does work. Like I mean, I think I saw your account, and you had one video where you were running through the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy was running through the beach, and you were filming him along the way. But I remember actually watching that and getting quite drawn into it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that video has had like over 1 million views or something. Yeah.
That's a funny story too. So that's on my personal account on TikTok, and when I first posted that, it got about 100,000 views. And I remember thinking, I mean, TikTok's a funny beast. You never truly know how the algorithm works, but basically you post a video, it goes out to a pool of people. Based on how they respond to the video, it'll go out to a bigger pool and a bigger pool. So
it'll just keep pushing.
That's why
testing.
content's king, because if it elicits a reaction, people are rewatching, sharing, commenting, then it'll go further. But there's also times where, you know, it might be stagnant for a few days and then
it just goes
pops off, you know, and we see that a bit as well. But in that case, you know, that video, I ended up reposting it, the exact same video and sound a few weeks later, and that's the one that got 1.6 million views. But yeah, to your point, I mean, that's great feedback. So it's good to know that it is engaging. But yeah, for context, that was like a behind the scenes with a gimbal, running through palm trees with my brother, and then showing the final shot that was made as well. So,
so going into your content services for TikTok, I think that's a new area that you're sort of establishing at the moment. Is that what you're pretty much doing? You're like pretty much producing content for e-com brands, like specifically on TikTok,
specifically on the platform. So we'll build our strategy. We'll actually manage the process too. So we'll do the posting, the replying to comments, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
And we will create the content itself. So usually that's either in-house or pairing with other TikTok creators who are already on the platform and know how to create similar stuff, and we sort of bring them into our team and sort of share ideas, and then they're actually usually the ones that are producing the content for the most part, because
are they local content
for the most part,
creators?
but sometimes it's not. It depends who we can source, but really having a face to the brand is on TikTok in particular is like super important. We've found, you know, someone who can, you know, see a comment today and respond to it in a video form, and, you know, sort of start to become recognized for their face as that brand. So, you know, we pair them with someone that's sort of in their demographic.
So it's just almost like a recognizable relationship that you have with someone.
There's a brand called Run Gum, and I believe they actually started before they even had a product. On TikTok, there was this dude, you might have seen him, where he's in public and he gets people to do like, he'll basically go to college campuses and say, hey, I'll give you $20 if you beat me in a race. And then he'll race these college kids. And another one where he gives someone $5 for every 10 seconds they can hang on a bar, and it's kind of like really entertaining social media videos.
Yeah, right.
And I recognized the dude before I even knew that it was a brand that sold gum of some sort. So
Yeah, okay.
that's probably a great example of where they've used the
So,
face.
I mean, you're seeing some big momentum there, and like, you're giving us a bit of a rundown in terms of what it's like to manage an account. And are people spending more money on advertising in TikTok as a result? Like, they're kind of using that content for ads themselves?
Yeah, so TikTok ads change a little bit. You probably
Yeah.
do need to make it a little bit more ad friendly, but in the TikTok style with text.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've seen, a year ago, people testing TikTok ads, not really seeing a result because it was still a fairly new platform. And now they're sort of circling back, realizing there's an opportunity there because the cost to advertise is significantly lower, but the conversion rate is here or there. It depends on the content, really.
Yeah.
So we are seeing more people now taking to the platform and advertising.
But I think it's a bit of a way to go.
Yeah.
In comparison to Facebook.
Yeah.
And,
Facebook's changed so much.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Okay, so like in terms of like ROI, are you sort of seeing that? Are you getting results from TikTok, like actual business from it? You sort of seeing
I
that,
mean, I can speak to our agency. That particular video, when that was getting some traction, we also had a couple other videos we put up about like how we work and some behind the scenes and stuff. And that seemed, so we were getting a lot of traffic. They were reading in a bit more, familiarizing themselves with us and going through the website. And at the time, we just updated the website, so the old one's been around for so long. And I don't think the form even worked properly, so they get to the website, they couldn't even book a call.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Which was terrible on my behalf. But we had probably 20 calls booked in overnight.
Yeah, okay.
So just as an example, the sort of scope, and 10 of those were really qualified brands. And,
Yeah, wow.
generating, most of those brands were sort of seven figures.
And they found you through
TikTok.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I think we spoke about this earlier. We probably have generated a few 100,000 for the agency over a while,
through
from TikTok lead generation. Yeah.
So for you moving forward, what's your priority in terms of lead gen strategy for your agency?
Primarily TikTok now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
and are you sort of taking a step back from Instagram? And
so we're still remaining relevant there.
Yeah.
But
you're not like pushing hard on it and like DMing people and stuff like that.
Not as much. That's also less effective now. That was like a key part of our lead gen early days, where we would DM brands and sort of get in touch that way. And I think now that a lot more creative agencies are out there, and that's a bit more saturated. But you can't go wrong with putting content out, putting it in front of people. And if it's good content and they want to consume it, that'll grow that way. So Instagram's just a little bit limited from the putting out content part, because it doesn't reach many people these days.
Yeah, that's cool. And we'll finish off with like I think you've got your own e-commerce brand. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that, and kind of what you've learnt a lot from it. What's the main sort of lessons you've learnt?
So partnered in Naming This Later. Sort of, it's been a while in the making.
So the business is actually called Naming This Later.
So. It's a funny one. And it was kind of a joke at first, and then we rolled with it, and it's become a whole thing. But so we technically that kicked off sort of August last year, and that's grown really nicely. But I guess the biggest learning for us was on the creative side again, because naturally that's where I sort of thrive. And we went from, in our ads, we're running pretty simple kind of iPhone clips. And that was about break even when we launched, and then we pumped out some proper shoots with models and went down to the beach and made it all aesthetic. That improved results pretty significantly, but still, we're sitting there like, okay, I feel like we could do this better. I feel like there's still, room to test some things. So as an example, our average thumb stop ratio, so that's how many people are watching at least 3 seconds, was like 15%. So 100 people saw the ad, about 15 people would actually watch a few seconds. And we established that as the benchmark, and then we started pumping out UGC for the brand. A lot of that I filmed myself or friends of ours, and instantly we saw a thumb stop ratio jump to like 30%. So we're able to double the attention on our videos of people watching just by switching out and testing some new stuff. So that's probably been the biggest learning for us, is like there was a time there where we were like, shoot, our Facebook ads even going to work for us? We'll break even for so long, barely. We weren't really making any money. And
and it's like that a lot for a lot of brands. They really struggle with like, that 1x or 2x
Yeah.
or 1.5,
Yeah.
and they can't really get to the 3 and the 5x.
Yeah.
And
it's just having faith that, first of all, people want your product. It's the reason you bring a certain product to market, because you believe in it. You probably tested it, and then just pivoting and trying something new. Failing, I think, is a really positive thing if it's done in the right way and in the right light, and you learn from it. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, especially if you're a brand starting out, like sometimes you need to, even if you're getting 1.5, 2x, it's actually a good sign, because it means that there's time to build on
to
that,
improve.
you know what I mean? Improve.
I think that's the best case
but
scenario.
I think a lot of clients sometimes get quite down about it because they're not making an immediate ROI. But marketing is a long-term investment, right? It's like something you just keep putting in, and then after 6 months, that's when things improve.
And so that's a natural thing too. After 6 months of having the brand, or a year of having the brand, naturally there's more word of mouth. There's all these other things that come into place, and naturally your return on any marketing is going to be slightly higher.
Exactly.
And that just comes over time as well.
All right, man. Well, that's pretty cool. Really awesome to have you on the show. It went pretty quick, I think. So
I lost track of time.
But please subscribe to our channel, and look forward to seeing you on our next episode. So thanks, Jay. Awesome.
Thanks so much, guys.
That was great. Cheers.
Thank you.